It's therapy time. I need it. I feel like maybe if I need it, a lot of other people need it. As of this recording, the Hall of Fame game happened last night. It was also cut short. We're so starved for real football, but we're so inundated with drinking from a fire hose of training camp and soon to be preseason news and information and highlights and beat writer speculation that I think it's the perfect time. You brought it up. I was so glad you brought it up when we were chatting on the side to talk about, like, let's take a step back for a second. And as important as all of this training camp news is, and it's wildly important, the last time you and I recorded, that's what we discussed. Camp hype, how to handle it, what things to care about, what things to maybe pump your brakes on. And we've had more, like, I expected a lot of access and I expected a lot of news and stuff to be flowing in from the beats and training camps and everything. This is beyond my wildest dreams of what's going on. Every single team has multiple beat reporters just wildly tweeting constantly every single day of every single
not
practice.
Every single team.
Yeah,
there's a couple teams we could use a few more beats.
We'll call it 80% of the teams. There's a couple that I'm like, are they practicing? Like,
we need a program where Patriots beat writers get relocated to the Falcons, maybe.
I know what Javon Baker eats for breakfast every morning, and I don't have the slightest goddamn idea if Trey McBride is still on the Cardinals.
I don't know.
I have no idea. Like, it's Rondale. We got a blurb from Falcons camp that Rondale was running with like the fours, and I haven't heard a peep. I haven't heard a peep ever since. But like I said, I know everything. I know every throw Patrick Mahomes makes in training camp. I know, so obviously joking around, but I think it is appropriate to as fixated as we get on all this training camp stuff. And we need to follow it. You and I talked before a lot about, like, we can't just stick our head in the sand and like pray that what we thought in May was the right thing, because so much is going to change. Some things changed even last night in the Hall of Fame game. Like, why is Khalil Herbert playing in the second quarter of the Hall of Fame game? I don't know. But we also need to remember the game that we're playing. And that balancing act of, remember, like a few months ago, before we had training camps and everything, we were all saying, remember, week 17 is all that matters. We want the rookies. We want the late season production, right? We want all of these different things. We want contingent value. And then training camp hits. And if your guy's not running with the ones, it's full-blown, it's like full-blown panic mode. We can't draft that guy anymore. And I think figuring out that balance now at this point in time, especially, it's only going to get worse, right? We got a month to go. It's only going to get worse. Making sure that, like, we kind of get almost in the right headspace, if you will, for the influx of information, and trying to be able to, you use the perfect word, parse, on our last show, like figuring out how to parse this information while comparing it to the fact that, like, we want to win in week 17. We're trying to win these tournaments. We don't win them in week 1. The week 1 depth chart is not static. Players get hurt. Things change. Chaos happens. That's the name of the game. So, like, kind of level setting right now on this influx of information and making sure that we're kind of right in the right headspace for everything is probably, it's going to be good for me. Like I said, it's a therapy session. I think everyone's struggling with it. I'm definitely personally struggling with it, but kind of talking it through, I think, would be good for everybody.
Yeah. The kind of, one sentence topic that I pitched was week 1 brain. Because I think we're all fighting week 1 brain right now, including me. Like, most of the news relates to week 1. Like, what is the teams are prepping ultimately for week 1, and then they're going to play the games in order and see how it goes. So we're getting a lot of information about what the initial depth charts are going to look like, what the plans for the early season stuff are. They are taking a look at some. Like, I think the Chiefs are probably doing, I still think the Chiefs with Deneric Prince are probably, like, thinking bigger picture. Like, we know who CH is. Let's see if this guy can be our RB2. Mm-hmm. I think he's getting a legit audition for the RB2, but he might fail that audition ultimately. Right. Yeah. And then they'll just go to CH who they there was a quote yesterday where they're like, Prince needs to know all the protections, and like he's still kind of getting up to speed on that, but he's making progress. It's second year in the program. He knows what he needs to get done. We'll see how it goes. And then like Clyde like knows all the protections. He knows the timing of the screen passes. Like, he knows all of it. So like, we don't need to give this dude a single rep. We'll give all the reps to this other guy. And I'm drafting the way I'm playing that now is I've stopped drafting CH and I am drafting Deneric Prince. I do think that might be a disaster, but I have CH. I drafted CH before, so I'm like, I'm just going to get some Deneric Prince. My portfolio as a whole will have both these guys. In this particular scenario, I think having some teams with Chiefs running back 2 on them will be good. And right now, I'm just going to take the guy I think that is favored to win the job because I think CH is that, and they're probably he probably does win the audition. But anyway, I think are a lot of these teams seem like they're just more like they're truly like just putting the guy who they think they can trust right away and giving them those reps. The Chiefs seem like more, that situation seems like more of an outlier to me than what is more common. So an example of that would be we got AJ Dillon hype today. And on the Roto World Football Show, they had a beat writer on who was talking about AJ Dillon being the RB2 potentially in the kind of a Jamal Williams way, like when they had Jamal Williams and Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon was drafted and he kind of played behind them. But maybe AJ Dillon could basically be the blocker to Marshawn Lloyd. That feels very week 1 brain to me. We know who AJ Dillon is. He stinks. We know that they're excited about Marshawn Lloyd. They think he can do some interesting stuff in the pass game. They talked up that they like committee approach. So we probably should not be. We should probably be very skeptical that Josh Jacobs is like a total workhorse. Even the beat writer on the Roto Football Show, I didn't catch his name, sorry, but he was like, I think down the stretch, basically, that's when you'll probably see Marshawn Lloyd come on. Like, oh, really? A rookie is going to come on down the stretch? That's mind blowing. So like nothing's. I guess what maybe what I did is I was like, yeah, I'll probably break ties more to Ty Chandler. Who's getting more of like he's locked in.
He has both, right? Yeah, he has the down the stretch stuff, but also he doesn't have AJ Dillon around.
So I lowered Lloyd like 4 spots or something in the ranks because I was like, yeah, it's probably somewhat newsworthy that a beat writer really doesn't think he's gonna come out of camp as the RB2. That's a little bit newsworthy, but it's not anything to panic over. And a lot of this stuff I think is minor adjustments with the idea of like, we're not hitting the nuts maybe with this play. And so some of that upside should come out of it a little bit of like, when we, in some of these cases, you're like, could this guy be like the RB2 from week 1 on? And it's like, well, Lloyd looks less likely for that maybe, but like the fact that AJ Dillon, has abs, is that I'm out on Lloyd now? No, I'm not out on Lloyd. Like he's still AJ Dillon, So it's like, I do think some of this, it's not like the AJ Dillon stuff was nothing, but it was probably closer to nothing than something to panic about.
I love the way that you put that and again, I think week 1 brain is the perfect way to encapsulate kind of everything that we're going to talk about where it is, what I would classify it as is the bet can change. And maybe the bet did change with Marshawn Lloyd. I've used this in reference to Kendre Miller. And I know people don't like to talk about him because it's really not a very fun. Talking about the Saints period and talking about an injured Saint is like you could just waterboard me.
We need a mashup of Dennis Allen talking about Kendre Miller versus the way he talks about Taysom Hill.
Seriously, like I would talking about an injured young Saints player. Like I said, just take me to the basement and waterboard me instead of having me talk about it. Like that sounds awful. I don't really want to talk about Kendre, but he's an example, just like Marshawn Lloyd, where I liked Kendre and I really like Marshawn Lloyd too. I like that whole pocket of those running backs before. The bet can change. And I think it's fair to say for sure Kendre, the bet has changed. Yeah. But the bet has changed a little bit, maybe on Marshawn Lloyd. Because I kind of did think like AJ Dillon's so bad, they drafted this guy. Maybe he will be, play 35%.
I think that's still on the table though. That's the other thing. Like, what are we hearing, right? Like, because this is the Javonte thing. Remember when Javonte was going to get cut? Remember that? That was like a week ago. Javonte was going to get cut a week ago. Now, like, Peyton's like, oh my God, he's a completely different guy. Who could have seen this coming? Like, I don't know, doctors. He's coming off of a multi-ligament knee tear, and they played a whole season. And like, then he dropped weight, and his knees were healthier. And he looks good. Like he's good. Like, I don't know. The Javonte was going to get cut stuff. I said at the time, I was like, this is pure beat writer speculation. This is someone saying, Javonte wasn't very good last year when you look at the numbers. Like, yeah, we know, man. We only look at the numbers. Like, we've been looking at the numbers since the season ended. Like, this is not news to us. Maybe it's like news to Denver Post readers, but it's not news to the fantasy community. Yet it was treated like news, which is a mistake. That's double counting. So, it's like then he comes in and it's like, oh, wow, he actually looks way better than he did coming off the torn ACL, MCL, or whatever. So, the Javonte stuff, I feel like you cannot just kind of throw away your priors and forget kind of where you were coming from on these things. You still want to be interpreting what you're hearing through the lens of what you already know about the player, and then if that news is adding to that or not. And I would classify the Marshawn Lloyd stuff as not really adding to what we already know. Like beat writers saying, I think these guys view Josh Jacobs as the clear workhorse. But we also have Coach Beacondex sharing all of these clips of them saying, we don't really believe in that. We believe in a committee. So right there, I'm already skeptical. I'm like, this dude's telling me his opinion, but that opinion kind of goes in the face of what the coaches are actually saying. Not that he's wrong, but I'm just like not going to like completely roll with that.
Yep.
And then he's also saying, I don't really foresee them using Lloyd as the clear number 2. I think he's going to have to earn it down the stretch. But Lloyd hasn't really been out there at practice. So
he just got back. He just got back yesterday or 2 days ago or whatever.
So that's different than him running with the threes. If he's running with that's beat writers' main value to us as people super duper steeped in all the stats and all the news and where these guys were drafted and what the coaches said after they were drafted is what is happening today on the practice field. That's the main thing they're adding to us. Not like to everybody. To everybody, they're catching them up on a bunch of the stuff that we know.
Mm-hmm.
But to us, it's what's happening today. And nothing really has happened over the last few days with Marshawn Lloyd because it hasn't really been out there. So it's like the fact that Benjamin Albright was like, why are you asking me about Troy Franklin? That's a little concerning to me. He's like barely distinguishing himself from this dude Veal, the 6th rounder they drafted or whatever. Like, yeah, that on the practice field, that's like way more concerning. The fact that Rondale Moore's running with the threes is very concerning. I would like to hear more about that. Maybe we can get a Patriots reader, beat writer transferred to Atlanta, and we can learn more about Ray.
We need the Bills guys. We need the Bills guys because every other day I'm convinced a new Bills skill player is headed straight to the fucking Hall of Fame. Like straight to the Hall of Fame, dude. I don't even know
man.
Shavers
or Shavers. Yeah,
Shavers. I'm not even sure who that is. And like, dude, I'm 80 drafts deep in college football best ball. Nobody is grinding the niche bullshit college and these guys around the edges. It's more than me. Trust me. And I was like, pardon me, who is going to be awesome for the Bills? I'm like, he's not going to make the team, bud. How can he be so good if these other 6 wide receivers are so good? This doesn't make you guys are going to go undefeated if you believe all the Bills beat writers.
Yeah. Well, that's another. I mean, although Chase Claypool is in trouble. That's what I take from the Shavers side. If you're Chase Claypool or Marcus Valdes-Scantling,
MVS and Mac Hollins is the best outside blocking wide receiver you've ever seen, and yeah, those other guys are useless. But to the point, the differences between what we get from a Falcons beat, right? We got that one thing that one day about the Falcons wide receivers, like, oh shit, like I kind of had penciled Rondale.
That was gold though.
Yeah,
we don't get a lot of that out of that. But like that to me, like, when do you freak out? You freak out when veteran receiver new to the team is running with the threes. Ray McLeod, who's basically like a clone of that guy, is running with the ones.
Yep.
I'm out. I'm just out. Like
6th round rookie Casey Washington is getting more ones reps than Rondale Moore is like, oh no, this is disastrous.
It's disastrous because like what's the prior, or like the original bet is the original bet strong? No, he's never really done that much. He, he could easily just be like a backup receiver now. Is there any reason to expect him to like come on down the stretch? Like, no. He's a veteran on a second team. Like, there's no. But with Troy Franklin, am I panicking? No, I'm not panicking. He's a day 3 rookie. He's going to have to distinguish himself over the course of the entire training camp. Probably, he's going to probably not do anything for weeks and weeks. You're hoping that when Bo Nix is starting, Franklin gets a chance and their connection shines through at the NFL level, and he wins you a week down the stretch. So, not that I'm taking Franklin a little lower. I'm taking Jalen McMillan a little higher.
Yes.
I am moving these guys around. I'm shuffling them based on what's happening in camp, but the goal is still to find the guy who comes on down the stretch. It's just that it's a little easier to do that if Todd Bowles is constantly talking about what an awesome receiver you are. But if you like the Todd, even that stuff, does Jalen McMillan today have the wide receiver 3 role locked down in Tampa? Probably not. He's probably still competing with Trey Palmer to who would start week 1. I don't know yet, but that doesn't matter. It's still I'm still moving McMillan up the ranks because it's pretty clear he's going to get a shot this year. Mm-hmm. And that's great. That's really great for his price.
The kind of Franklin McMillan comp is such a good one because I know it feel like this is kind of really the shining example of it's so vibes based and emotional, psychological, you're playing psychological warfare with your goddamn self during this time of the year. Cause you're especially maybe if you're like me, the Broncos are pretty appealing, especially depending upon how your draft room goes, right? It's buddy, I might need the Bronco. I might need Nix Franklin on this team or whatever. And so knowing that you got that in your back pocket, you liked maybe Troy Franklin as a prospect. Clearly the draft capital is not what we were hoping for, but such is life. And the wide receiver, look, I get Josh Reynolds is going to be an all-pro wide receiver this year, according to the Broncos guys. But when that and Phil Jordan Humphrey and these guys are the competition, I'm comfortable making that bet. But again, the bet does change a little when probably the most locked in Broncos beat writer, say whatever you want about Albright, but he's basically yeah, guys, he's literally nothing right now. But again, right now, that's the whole thing. This happens all the time. You show me a late round wide receiver that is a stone cold lock to not only start and play every snap in week 1 and be good for fantasy. You show me that, and I'll take him in every single goddamn draft.
Well, you had it last year in Puka, and we both didn't. So I don't know what happened there. I still am what?
The only thing that saved my ass last year from a horrible season of player takes was I had saved so much drafters and DraftKings by the end of the summer that I finally got wise to Puka Nacua
and Kyron.
Kyron. So I had boatloads of Kyron, but then I had enough Puka that it was Jesus.
Nice.
I just got saved, but Underdog I did not get saved. With Puka specifically, Kyron, I had 12. I got it up to enough. Nice. We got it up to enough Kyron that it was acceptable on Underdog, but for me, it only saved my bacon on the other sites because of timing, really. But there are more often Troy Franklins than there are Puka Nacuas, and we're so in search of the next Puka Nacua that we're Jalen McMillan. Oh my God, they keep talking about how awesome he is. Now he's a better bet to start week 1, and he is. And so what you just said is so spot on. I am upping my exposure to Jalen McMillan in when I'm in slows and he's at ADP, we're doing it because I didn't have as much as I probably wanted to. And anyway, even if we heard nothing about him, I think I just was a little underweight. Then you layer in this okay, I think the bet's changed. The bet has improved a little bit. He's a better shot to be good. He's a better shot to have a week 1 role. He's a better shot to, even more than those, he's a better shot to, all right, Trey Palmer really is going to still start week 1. We're never not going to see Jalen McMillan. We may not ever see Troy Franklin. But we're never not going to see Jalen McMillan.
Guys get redshirted and completely disappear. And so you're trying to go, what are the odds that this dude is literally nothing all year? Which for Troy Franklin is a baseline rate of pretty decent that he's like literally it's 18 zeros because he was a day 3 pick.
Yeah.
Even though it's a wide open depth chart.
Yeah. No matter what we think about the team situation, you also have to go back to, like you said, it's a day 3 wide receiver. Like I know I'm not trying to pick on Kimani Vidal, but the Kimani Vidal thing is the best example of all that. Troy Franklin and Kimani Vidal, honestly, are like the wide receiver and the running back version of the same fucking thing. So late round rookie player who I think we all kind of liked is part of why we're anchored to this thing. Like if I don't know if
I've taken
I can't think, you know,
I have a lot of Vidal. I haven't taken him very much recently.
Yeah, right. But it was, we kind of like the prospect, and then they got dropped into a situation that was like, oh man, we could get things right out of the gate, and they could be, you know, Vidal could be the man in the backfield. Troy Franklin could be maybe not the wide receiver 1, but like the wide receiver 2. Who knows? Like Marvin Mims wasn't very good. Josh Reynolds, like who cares about these guys? He played with Bo Nix. We can have some narrative-based fun takes. But at the end of the day, the bet was still a 6th-round rookie running back and a day 3 rookie wide receiver on bad offenses, like on bad offenses. And so it was like, that's probably not going to be anything super like beneficial for best ball this year. Like that's the baseline expectation. They're not winning us Best Ball Mania, but then you do what you have to do. What you just said. Yeah, right. But then you have to do the thing that you said, the balancing act of, all right, so let's lay out this range of outcomes. When is this, you know, day 1 starter and the prospect that I thought he was, and he's a smash insta from day 1. And then when, you know, and then you go all the way down the range and you're to like, all right, well, what percentage of the time does this guy never play an NFL snap? You know, never play an NFL snap this season or ever, maybe for Kimani Vidal. Like that's the range. Like he's not an NFL football player too. He's a day 1 starter and good in the NFL. So but that hasn't changed. Nothing about that has changed, but you can like change the kind of percentages that you apply you're going across there.
You're going Vidal is you know, worst case scenario, he's going to be like probably the RB3 behind Isaiah Spiller, I guess, because J.K. Dobbins got $50,000 guaranteed. He's unlikely to make the team. Like this is an extended tryout. He's coming off the Achilles. Like, you know, he's brought in because you know Roman's got the familiarity with him, but like this isn't gonna, you know, Vidal's really got a much stronger situation than it appears. But then we go like, hey, you know, J.K. Dobbins actually looks like pretty good. And he's getting reps with the ones, and Gus Edwards is out there. Gus Edwards is out of practice, and Vidal's like nowhere to be seen. He's like repped a little with Justin Herbert. There's videos of it, but basically he's not really repping with the ones. And that was his opportunity in some ways to kind of show us that like, okay, this guy's like really on their radar as you know, a big part of the backfield, or at least like, you know, someone that they have tagged as the potential to become a big part of the backfield over the season. And it doesn't really seem like that's the case. And Dobbins seems like he is going to make the team. And maybe he's healthier than I realized. And maybe like the Achilles, was it a partial tear and he's going to come back quicker? I have no idea, but I'm like starting to be like, maybe I just like misjudged how, you know, healthy Dobbins was going to be able to be for this year somehow. Because he looks pretty healthy / he's better doing things a healthy
offseason.
Yeah,
he looks better than last offseason. He was dragging his leg around, telling us he was 100%. And I watched the clip, and I'm like, buddy, your one leg doesn't work. And this year, like he kind of looks fine. And
he kind of looks fine. So I don't know. I'm not like hammering Dobbins now. I am taking some more Dobbins, not like a ton, but I am taking some, and I'm not taking Vidal really at all. The thing too, I would note is that like, I feel like as we play this game, people are like, you know, it's kind of like we're like the Wall Street traders. It's like, buy, sell. But like, you don't actually sell. You never sell. You already bought. Any teams that you bought are bought. You can't sell those teams. So like, I'm at like 12% Vidal. That's too high. But I'm like, so now I'm going, well, I personally am at 12% Vidal. I basically was saying, I know this is risky. I know that he could be a total bust. I normally don't even like this type of bet because I want to avoid zeros. But man, this could be such not a zero, you know, that I think it's worth like in the 150s, you know, on builds where I generally am not going like a lot of hyper fragile. So I generally have like 5, 6 running backs. Like maybe I can override a 0 at running back, big swing. I've taken him sometimes with Gus. I've taken him sometimes with Dobbins, but more often he was just part of like a running back group with, he's one of the upside swings on it. Right. So I don't mind that I did that, but now information is coming in that is not a good bet anymore to make. And so I'm just going to, I'm not now going to make the bet at like 165. I'm going to have to do that like at 185 or 195 because I already have a bag. If I didn't have a bag, maybe I'd approach it differently. Maybe I would buy a little bit of discount. Maybe I'd go, oh, this is actually a time to make that bet everyone else is making at a cheaper cost. And I'll have like 3% of it or whatever. So the fact that you're still building out the portfolio from here, you can't get rid of those old teams. And then that is more reason to move off of takes that have changed. Like does Vidal have a 0% chance of mattering now? No. And I have 12% to date. So that would be great if he does.
Yeah.
Am I going to continually add to the position because maybe Vidal still could work out? No, that's not good. Like that's good process would be moving off of a take that has gotten worse because you still have access to the upside through the teams that you've already drafted. You don't have to double down when the situation has changed.
It's not sunk cost fallacy because none of these guys are sunk costs. So actually I'll start there. That's the craziest thing about all this to our week 1 brain and like best ball landscape idea is like, remember how chaotic the whole season is. So my favorite example I tweeted about this, honestly, because I a lot of things that I tweet or write about or we talk about on the show is just me going through a mental health like booster. Okay. So like, it's stressful when you have a big Kendre Miller.
If you're using Twitter as a mental health booster, buddy.
Oh no, dude, we turn off the notification. We turn off the notifications. I just got to type it out to make myself feel better. Okay. So Twitter's the opposite of a mental health booster.
It's yet to. I've been on there for a long time, and it's yet to work as a booster.
0 times. You just got to close it and turn off the notifications after you click send. But I kind of went back and looked. I actually just like went back and looked for the mental health and then shared it on Twitter because I thought it was really interesting. And you definitely remember this. All the best ball bros who've been playing this for some time remember this. But the year Liam won Best Ball Mania 2, we always talk about the guy you need. And I think maybe it was Alvin Kamara in the first year. And then the next year, the like epitome of the guy you need was Rashad Penny that season. Not only because
you had to have
right. Amon-Ra and they're kind of two different bets, but kind of interesting actually through the lens of this conversation that we're having here today. Penny was one of the single greatest disaster off seasons I can recall. But we like block that from our mind. Like we get to this time of year and we're just like, there's bad hype. I can't draft that guy anymore. And I got to draft the guys getting positive news or running with the ones or whatever. That summer, so Rashad Penny was heading into his 4th year, and he was a first-round pick with the Seahawks, and so they had to decide on his 5th year, right? The 5th-year option, and naturally he hardly played in his first few seasons, so they were like, no, buddy, we're not giving you the 5th-year option. So, okay, negative number 1. Number 2, he's already not the starter. Chris Carson was the starter. He got a cleanup on his knee. He had previously torn his ACL in one of his knees, and he had to go in and get like another cleanup procedure. So he missed early camp stuff. Then all the early stuff is like, I believe it was DJ Dallas, not Travis Homer. I'll confuse DJ Dallas and Travis Homer are the Spider-Man meme for sure.
But I mean, we're on the same team. Yeah,
they were on the same team doing the same goddamn thing, just being a thorn in our side for many years. Travis Homer, famously, the only other non-DeAndre Swift for Bears running back who did not play in the Hall of Fame game last night. Anyway, Rashad Penny, cleanup procedure, right? Doesn't get the 5th-year option, missing time. They're telling us DJ Dallas is the passing down back behind Chris Carson. You're like, okay. And so I got a straight early down thumper backup who hasn't done shit in 3 years. He kind of started like in the 12th or 13th round that year, if I'm recalling correctly. And it was a free fall all summer. By the end of the summer, is he going to get cut? He's getting Alex Collins. Remember Alex Collins?
Yeah.
Alex Collins is on the team, and they're like, Alex Collins is the RB2, and DJ Dallas is the passing down back. You're like, Rashad Penny's going to get cut from this goddamn team. He played in the preseason. He was terrible. He played in the last game. They arrested everybody, right? It was Hall of Fame game level stuff. And Rashad Penny's playing in the final game with all the XFL players. And you're just like, fuck, dude, it's over. like this is it. All that Rashad Penny I drafted earlier as the Chris Carson handcuff is useless. And guess what happens? He is the guy you need, the running back 1 overall in fantasy, not just in week 17 for the final month of the season. If you didn't have him, you didn't win shit in fantasy football and best ball, anything. And so, yeah, that's a Kyron level, Devontae Adams level unicorn. I get it. But it's an example that I wanted to like kind of remind myself as this time comes around that like, remember the point of this game. The point of this game is like, dude, we're going to look back in week 10 and even the shit we talk about here today, and we're just going to laugh. Troy Franklin and Kendre Miller and Kimani Vidal. Like Kimani Vidal might be on a practice squad, right? And we're just like, what were we doing, man? Like what? But that doesn't change the fact that doesn't mean drafting them was wrong. It just means like, keep in mind what we're doing here. When the upside, if you agree with what Pat said, like the upside case of Kimani Vidal outweighs all the aren't you worried? We all see the aren't you worried? We're not morons. But if the upside case is like, buddy, you got the workhorse Chargers, Greg Roman, Harbaugh, Justin Herbert, workhorse running back who catches passes in maybe an underrated Chargers offense in the 13th, 14th round. Does that sound good? Yeah, it does. So like balancing all of that with the negative news, with the fact that like, dude, so long as these guys make the team, it's never really over. Like it's never really over. Latavius Murray that same season was the guy I was drafting a lot in he's the back of the Mark Ingram role.
He got cut.
He got cut. And that's when Dobbins and Gus and Justice Hill blew out their knees that year.
That's right. He went to the Ravens.
For the Ravens. And it was Devonta Freeman and Latavius Murray as the Ravens running backs. So again, these are outlier situations, but that's the point. When the season gets here, the chaos is going to play out. And just remember that like you're drafting these guys for the chaos. You're not just drafting them for like week 1, shit, he's inactive. You know who else was inactive week 1 last year? Devon Achane. We're drafting him in the 2nd round this year. Like there's so much anarchy that it's just really important, I think, to like level set with that. And we want to react, like you said, but the bets are changing. You need to identify to what extent they've changed, not say it's binary. He's a yes or he's a no now. And sometimes they are yes or no, but a lot of the times it's like, okay, he was going in the 150s. He should maybe be a last round pick right now, but he didn't lose every possible path to helping you win. It's just the bet changed and thus the price should change.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing that's difficult, I think, as we move, this is kind of the crossover period as we move from like the early part of the offseason where it's like post-draft, it's a lot of hope. It's a lot of every rookie's going to be good. Every team's going to improve. And we're excited about a lot of players. No one's hurt yet. Then we cross
Justin Herbert. Except Justin Herbert.
Justin Herbert, yeah. Well, that's why it's crossover, because now we have the Hopkins injury, the Herbert injury. Yeah, so we're actually starting to get injuries. We also had the Geno scare. So you're getting this. We're moving from a period where we're a lot more hopeful about a lot of players to one where we're going to become a lot more pessimistic, and then just also like bad things will happen that will change our perception and the reality as well. So, a lot of the we need to actually move a lot of these rookies down over the course of the summer, because a lot of their situations will get worse.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them will get better, and then some of them will ultimately look like, holy crap, how did you get him in the 14th or the 15th?
Yes.
When, having to take him in the 9th was that's a lot more difficult to build a team that crushes when you get them in the 9th instead of the 13th or something. So there was a reason we do this, right? There's a reason we're attacking the rookies, and the rookies were more expensive this year than they have been. So now when we get into training camp, we're going to have to we want to take in the information that's coming in of going, oh, actually this guy's like pretty far from mattering, and lower him in the rankings and take a little bit less of him because the bet has gotten worse. It doesn't necessarily mean it was a terrible bet to begin with, especially if you were kind of drafting a lot of rookies in general and shooting for that upside. Doesn't mean those previous teams are dead. But I think we're figuring out where to concentrate our fire a little bit more down the stretch on some of these rookie bets. The Penny example is interesting though, because it does remind me a little bit of like Khalil Herbert. We're like, oh, what's this dude playing in the Hall of Fame game? It could be over. But I think Khalil Herbert's the best runner on the Bears.
He was good again. It's not like he ran 4 times for 6 yards. He was awesome again last night. Every time he's on the field, he produces.
Yeah. So I would love if Herbert dropped in price. If Herbert's actually one of those guys, I don't have a ton of Herbert. I'm 4%. Because I'm I don't, is he going to make the team? All the stuff everyone's worried about. But that's a situation where I'm oh, now you're just more worried about the thing that we were already worried about. And I can get this dude in the 18th all the time. I would love that. That would seem great because if he makes the team, because here's the thing with Penny, right? Seahawks were an effective running game. We knew they loved to run the ball. They were good enough to where they could support a running back if they gave him the work. And Penny had shown us at times that he was very explosive. He could get healthy. He could be fun. Herbert is healthy, has been explosive, has been consistent as a rusher. It's a good kind of early down grinder type, the type that they might ultimately decide that they really like with a rookie quarterback, that guy they can kind of lean on to keep the offense on schedule.
Get what's blocked, unlike fucking DeAndre Swift.
What's blocked, yeah. Over the course of the year, they might start to think, it'd be more fun if we didn't get 2 yards on this well-blocked first down. This is starting to get annoying.
Anybody that's ever played or watched or been to a practice or something, watching the offensive coordinator, or you've seen Shanahan does this, when we get a little behind the scenes where Shanahan, these guys are so brilliant in diagnosing the defense that he knows when the play should be a touchdown. My favorite is Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss. Lane's bounced around a lot, Tennessee and USC and Ole Miss and Florida Atlantic and all that, but he is the king of this. He knows when he has the perfect play call. And you then you get the behind the scenes sometimes where they haven't even called, the quarterback hasn't even signaled the play and all that kind of stuff. And he's touchdown. And they make the snap and he's walking down the sideline, with his hands up in the air. You know what I mean? That is but there's a run game version of that too.
Chess game of the coverage versus the play call. Yeah.
The run game will happen too, where the offense, they call a play and they're this is here. It's here. It's here. Just hit. And then DeAndre Swift bounces it instead of running off the guard's ass or whatever. And the coaches on the sideline are just furious. And it's there was a 10-yard play. It's not really that big of a deal, to us and in the grand scheme of things, but to those coaches, that shit is huge. That's why Ken Walker has all these concerns, right? And it seems really stupid and really silly.
Because Walker has had a really good camp. Mm-hmm. And there was a report that he's looking like the kind of clear cut. Who was it? It was an SI. I forget, but they had a report that he was basically the clear cut starter, and that Charbonnet was looking more like depth. It was Albert Breer had this, and that's obviously good for Walker and bad for Charbonnet. Mm-hmm. But what has fundamentally changed for Charbonnet? He's still, it's still very clearly those two guys. He's got all the contingent value that he had. He is still a bigger, better pass catching resume and more consistent back than Kenneth Walker. I mean, Kenneth Walker's had 2 full seasons with a lot of carries in the NFL, and his success rates in both seasons have been extremely bad. This is not a consistent runner. He's a big play threat. Normally we like that a lot. But if we're saying like which guy's more likely to, carry the load, the larger, more consistent back or the smaller, more explosive back, not that Walker's like tiny, but he, Charbonnet's a big dude. So normally we would think that Walker would be like the explosive, like Aaron Jones kind of mixing in guy, and Charbonnet is going to, carry a big part of the load, right? So
like Rojo, Fournette. Remember when the Bucks brought in Fournette? It was like Rojo was like this, clearly the more exciting, more talented runner, more talented athlete, but it's like he just doesn't do what Tom Brady and the offense wants, and Leonard Fournette is going to do it. Right? He's going to block. He's going to run straight ahead. And we can hate it all we want, but such is life.
Well, and Rojo, I'm always thankful to Rojo that he took until the end of the season to lose his job. He gave us that season, and then then we got playoff Lenny. But but yeah, I mean it's kind of similar though. Charbonnet's not quite as that good in the passing game. Is just kind of a dump off outlet, but he's better than
like Walker. Just do what we need. Yeah, you're not special.
But that's the other thing with Walker is he's not a very good receiver. He had a really bad receiving resume coming in, and he hasn't been much as a receiver as a pro. So, like, I'm glad that Walker's having a good camp, and it definitely changes my feeling on the bet a little bit. I moved Walker up, I moved Charbonnet down. But am I going to start like hammering Walker? If Walker were to go into the late 5th on this news, like, hell yeah, can't wait to fade him there. Yep. If Charbonnet drops to the 14th, 15th, 16th round, like, oh my God, we hammer, So it's just like, yeah, I was kind of hoping we would get news of like, this is a split. And then Charbonnet would jump into like the 9th round and I would have this big win. I don't have that, but I'm not hating the Charbonnet picks that I've already made. And he's a guy that like I lowered a little bit. I'm going to be taking less frequently now, but I'm probably still taking a decent amount of Charbonnet because you're like what you talked about where, the guy is bouncing it. Swift is going to bounce so many runs. Like they're going to imagine them like, we're in training camp. They're, no one can touch them. No one can hit these guys at all. When they get out there in the actual NFL football games, it's week 6. This dude turns on the tape for like the 6th week in a row, right? He's watching this dude bounce runs that he shouldn't have bounced. He's watching wide open holes that this guy should have hit. He's looking for the big play. We don't need the big play here. How many times do I got to say we don't need the big play? Like that kind of stuff builds up. It's like, Charbonnet's starting to look a little more appealing. Khalil Herbert is looking a little more appealing as a guy who just does what he's supposed to do, like that can kind of change like the plans because these coaches are optimistic as well. Like they brought in Swift. They gave him way too much money. They're talking up what a weapon he is in the passing game. He is pretty good in the passing game, but he also has some flaws. And now over the course of the season, I think it's okay to go, I think Khalil Herbert is good. I think DeAndre Swift is not a good early down runner. I think over the course of an entire season, Khalil Herbert, provided he makes the team, will eat into that workload and potentially could displace him as the early down runner in a similar way to the way Chuba Hubbard displaced Miles Sanders, who had that big contract. He's got the money. We can't bet against Miles Sanders. He just got paid. Don't you know that? We can bet against those guys. So those are some of the best bets that we can make. Devin Singletary can come in and displace Dameon Pierce because Devin Singletary does everything well. And over the course of the season, coaches tend to like that. Coaches tend to want to lean on that. Coaches tend to get sick of the thing that would have won them the game not happening, and then they turn to a guy they feel like they can trust more. So if we think that there's a guy like that, and to me, Herbert would be one of those guys where I feel very confident that he does a thing well. I think his best case scenario is staying on the Bears because he does a thing well that the starter doesn't do well. So there's like a very good path for him.
Mm-hmm.
You do have a small out where maybe he lands in a good situation if it gets cut. That generally makes me pretty nervous in the same way that I was talking about coaches wanting to be able to trust their guys. Someone joining the team very late is going to put him behind the 8 ball and it could be a disaster. So I really would like Herbert to make the team. But, you know, they don't have any depth behind outside of Homer, I guess, but they don't have any running depth behind those two guys because everyone else is hurt. And they had someone just get hurt right before they came or retire, I think. Who did they just lose? I forget. They just lost someone before the Hall of Fame game. So they didn't. Was it Cohen going back with them?
No, he's on the Jets, but
okay.
That's the first thing. Bears running back retire when I searched was Tariq Cohen, who ironically was on the Bears, but not.
Yeah, it was. Maybe it was an injury. Anyway, there was very little depth behind those guys. Nathan Yonke pointed this out, which is why it's in my mind. But the fact that those guys played is a little less concerning than it otherwise. It's not good. I'm not saying don't worry about it. It means nothing. But it's not like, oh, they're definitely getting cut, or, you know, because Khalil Herbert's had a good camp, and he's been, you know, he was listed as the co-backup with Roshan. Roshan talked about how the roles still aren't set yet. So I'm still I'm still somewhat open-minded to the idea that maybe Herbert does win that kind of secondary running role, or at least makes the team as the RB3, and maybe he's not active on game days. Maybe it's Homer because Homer comes in and catches passes. But kind of in a penny way, I think Herbert is good enough to make some noise over the course of the full season.
I totally agree. I think Khalil Herbert might be one of the better examples of this whole conversation. And it's never this simple. We're never this with him. I think it's fine. But in general, we're never this good at like who is really good and who is really bad. There's so many shades of gray on a lot of that stuff. And a lot of times we're talking about young players where we're really speculating how good they are at the NFL level, right? The Troy Franklins and those, we really have no idea. But with Khalil Herbert, he makes for like one of my favorite things that honestly, I think I've probably gotten well, we'll see if it's better if Khalil Herbert's like not in the NFL in 2 years, which if it were up to the Bears, that would probably be apparently the case. But I feel pretty darn confident to just say, look, it's weird. The Bears backfield is weird. The way they handle Khalil Herbert is weird. The fact they paid DeAndre Swift all this money is weird. I don't really get it. And like when I try to project touches or project a depth chart, or I try to come up with a scenario like you did, I get that someone would say like, that's it. Like that's the case for this thing. But again, going back to our week 1 versus week 17, you know, week 1 brain type stuff. This is the Khalil Herbert thing is very much week 1 brain. But in multiple ways, in the way that you just mentioned, where like he's just good. I feel extremely confident that Khalil Herbert is just a good NFL running back. He's not Christian McCaffrey, but he's not CEH, right? And there's a lot of value in just knowing I'm drafting a football player who, if he gets on the field, he's good at football. Like that sounds really simple, but it's actually really hard in this game to figure that out. Like we have to pay really high prices for confirmed, locked in, really good football players in this game.
Yeah.
Once you reach a certain round, you're paying for a lot of speculation, projectable volume, projection, youth, hope. We're paying for a lot of that stuff. And so when I can get a cheap price on a player that I know is good, it's not that I don't care about the other stuff, because that's definitely not true. But to a certain extent, I just plug my nose and say, he's good at football. There's a bunch of different paths to this working out. There's certainly paths to it failing. And that's why he goes at pick 180 or whatever. If there were not all these paths to failure and not all this weird uncertainty around the Bears, do you think Khalil Herbert would go at pick 180? No, because look where DeAndre Swift goes. Like we're getting, it's the double counting thing. It's like, I know he's good. The Bears situation is a great one. Like I want the Bears running back. Don't we all? Look at their offense. Like yeah. I want them. So I don't want to double count the concerns against him. And this is the big thing that I have to keep reminding myself too. And I think everybody probably has to keep reminding themselves is like, by the way, football, pretty violent game, guys. Like dudes get hurt. Cam Akers somehow is the only guy who, suffers injuries in his back and serious injuries in his back in a couple of months. Guys are going to get hurt. Guys are going to miss time. 60 something quarterbacks played last year. So that's quarterbacks. Think about how many running backs played. I don't have that number because it's probably such an astronomical number. Nobody's keeping track of it. So many running backs are going to get on the field. J.K. Dobbins got hurt in week 1 last year. We just talked about J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards and Justice Hill creating a path to Latavius Murray being relevant. So much chaos is going to play out that I just want to have guys like Khalil Herbert and Zach Charbonnet. That's like, I know what I'm going to get. I could get zeros, of course, but I know what I'm going to get if something favorable happens. And like, there's not that, like, Kimani Vidal needs like a bunch of favorable shit to happen, and he needs to be good. I like the guys where when the chaos plays out in their favor, it's like, this was easy. This was so smooth. I didn't have to like guess on a bunch of stuff, and I got a good football player in a good situation because something broke their way.
Yeah, and yeah, exactly. And there's like this, you know, one of the sort of a dynasty thing here as we think about like the value of, you know, the way stuff gets priced, where like in dynasty, especially at receiver, you see that like, you know, the receivers with the, you know, like, okay, Cortland Sutton, right? Going in the top 100 of best ball, just barely, you know, he's sneaking in, he's in the 90s. But like, if you were to go take Cortland Sutton and try to trade Cortland Sutton for like Jalen Polk, you know, like, no, that's not happening, you know? And it's like, well, why not? Like, you know, Jalen Polk's probably not going to outscore Cortland Sutton this year. Sutton's not that old, you know, he'll get probably a couple more years, you know, of production. Like, isn't Cortland Sutton like more likely to outproduce Jalen Polk over the next couple years? Like, I probably, but like, there's this, yes, but I'm pricing this like small chance that Polk's the nuts over, you know, that he's one of the guys that you wanted to have, that he emerges as this huge producer, and young, so that like I'm getting production and I'm going to have future production to move, which is so valuable in dynasty, right? There's that small chance. And Sutton's chance of that is at 0, partly because he's not young, but partly it's like, we know there's no like additional. So when you get down into the late rounds of best ball, I think there's something similar happening where it's like, how much like hope can we, even if it's like just a little chance of happening, like, is there a chance this guy is him, you know? And Vidal, right? Like, one of the reasons I liked him was like, yeah, maybe he is him. I don't know. I really don't. So if the situation looks that maybe he could emerge and take this over, if, you know, there's a small chance that he's him, and that happens to be the case, then all of a sudden this is a huge win. As the situation gets worse, and as the chances that he is that guy get a little worse, I'm like, okay, now this is more of like an 18th round type of bet, and I'll wait until it gets there before I take any more. Herbert's not like that. Herbert's like, he's not him. We know he's not him. He's had a chance to be him. That's not going to happen. But what he could be is a good enough back in a really good situation, kind of like Pacheco, Chuba. We've made this bet repeatedly with Deontay Foreman. You know, like, it's the Deontay Foreman bet. It's like, this guy is good enough. The team is not that interested in. They like the NFL also doesn't find this profile all that exciting. Like, good enough early down runner, not dynamic in the passing game, not like super explosive, but just like gets it done in a chunk play way. Can trust him in short yardage. Like, yeah, okay, fine. Like, we'll keep him around, but he's not going to like what we build it around. But over the course of the year, maybe he ends up seeing a lot more work than expected because, you know, they can lean on him when they need to. So to me, it's like, it's not a bet you can get really excited about, but to help fill out running back rooms and stuff like that, some of these guys were like, they're good. They're in good enough situations where that can shine through. It does have some utility in best ball. It's maybe more of a best ball thing versus a redraft thing too, where it's like, this is one of the things I've been trying to think through this summer is when I'm drafting best ball picks, sometimes I'm drafting the guys that I think have the best chances of being $300 waiver ads in week 9, right? Like, who can be like a big waiver ad that people are super excited about for that week? Like, once we're in the thick of it, once the grossest stuff starts to become really exciting, like, oh my God, this guy might get, you know, 15 touches this week. We gotta go nuts for him and get him on waivers. Like that type of play right. It's like why I'm still drafting Ricky Pearsall and stuff, because I could definitely see when we're spending a ton of fab to get Ricky Pearsall. Like that scenario is extremely obvious. So Herbert and some of these guys where we're betting a little bit on the talent, even though they're incomplete talents, very much qualify for that kind of thinking.
So this is where I do think it gets interesting. The person probably listening is like, all right, I'm seeing it, right? I get what you guys are saying. I don't want to go panic and just think only about week 1. But how do you balance it? Is, I think, from a practicality perspective, when we go into our drafts or of course we're like updating rankings and stuff, but that's also like, I don't want to get into a rankings debate, but if we're going full therapy session, like this time of year is also really fucking painful for rankings conversations. Cause it's like I got him 175. Would you like him to be 183? Like, sure. Like what? I don't actually care. Probably what's happening in your draft is actually dictates where, right? You guys we built tools and you built tools that are telling you that the static exact ranking is not the fucking answer. It's a lot of other things that play into it. So like I said, I don't want to get into it. And then he gets into it. But, but there is some form of like, if we want to make it really, really simple from a rankings perspective, is like, okay, the Kendre, Vidal, Charbonnet, Herbert, all these guys, it has changed. And then, so the flip side of that is Chase Brown, Andre Yoshivas. I'm going to forget other, Deneric Prince. The bet has substantially changed for Deneric Prince. Everything that you said is 100% spot on, but like, it's changed. When you're running with the 2s for 2 straight weeks in camp, you have a much better chance of being the 2. And it's the Kansas City Chiefs. So it has changed. Will it play out that way? I have no idea, but I would like to find out with Deneric Prince on my on my teams to find out.